Let's talk a little bit about semantic HTML. And the whole purpose here is making our code on our website more understandable and accessible. So this won't do a whole lot for someone just looking and reading your website, but it will make a big difference for those looking at the code you wrote or those using some accessibility tools. So jumping into that. Semantic HTML, these are new elements or kind of very specific elements that are used for common but specific purposes. Everything that we're going to talk about with semantic HTML, everything that's done with semantic HTML can be done with other tags and elements. So for example, we talked about divs a while back, and divs could be used to create sections where you say, like, this is a introduction section, this is a section with pictures, this is a section like that. Some of what we're going to learn is, for example, to replace that. And I alluded to this earlier, this helps with the readability. If someone's looking at your code and you've called something a header, it's easy to tell, oh, this is all the header information. Or if it's a footer, this is all the footer information. It also helps with accessibility because it labels certain things. And so if someone's navigating with keyboard controls or with a screen reader or something like that, it will sometimes pull from these things and decide how it reads and organizes and explains things. A good example of this might be if you're reading a Wikipedia article, right? And there's some pictures in it, and they've got it laid out so it looks nice for someone visually looking at it, but most of the main text is like this. And so how would a screen reader go through it? Well, you might imagine it just kind of skims each line, but then it's going to talk about this picture a bunch of times. With some of this semantic HTML, you can label things so that screen reader will know, okay, read all of this text, then jump over to this, or read all of the text across the whole page, and then jump to the images, stuff like that. That's part of the reason for using this, is it lets people write programs to navigate through the web page using some of this information. So we'll talk about two sets of elements. The first are structure elements. So these are ones that let the anyone who's looking at the code know what is the, where is this on the web page, what is it doing? And so we've got the header tag, which creates a header section. We've got a nav tag, which creates a navigation section. We've got the main tag, which will create or kind of label the main part of your web page. As you'll notice as time goes on, web pages are getting more and more complex. So it's useful to label, this is the main part, everything else is, layout or other things like that. And then you've got the footer tag, which can be used to create a footer. Like I said before, you could do this with a div and then ID equals and then give it a special ID or some other stuff, but these are just a couple of the ones that we say, okay, we're almost always going to have these, so let's create a special thing that we call for this that allows us just a little bit more clarity when we're looking at it. Other basic elements that'll come up, and here's where you'll kind of see where it makes sense to have these. So a section tag. Basically what you're saying with a section tag is everything in this section all relates to a common theme. So like I said, you can do that just as easily as far as displaying it with a div tag, but div doesn't necessarily say everything in here should be related. You've got an article tag. An article designates standalone information. So if you're saying, it'll typically be the main thing on your page, but if it's like, this is a blog post, you'll put article above and below it. Then you'll have another blog post, article above and below it. Or a news article on a web page. Or say like a Twitter thread. You could kind of think about that being an article, like the whole chunk of all the tweets together. that's sort of the idea we're getting along here, is that they don't need to necessarily have anything else on the page. Everything in that article is standalone. You've also got an aside tag. And this says it's related info to something else, but it's not necessarily essential. It's like extra information that someone wants to know. So maybe you put a quote at the top of your page. That would be an aside. It's not essential, it's kind of bonus information. Then the last two that we'll look at have to do with kind of media that you put into the page, so not text, but pictures, videos, stuff like that. Sometimes, or as you go, you might find that it's useful to encapsulate a picture in an additional figure tag. And this is because you're telling someone using a screen reader or someone looking at it, this is being used to illustrate or serve some purpose, or it's a video used as an example, stuff like that. And then it works nicely when you pair it with the fig caption tag, which says this goes with the figure that it's adjacent to. So that's some of the basics of semantic HTML. It's really just some specialized tags that we've come up with because it comes up so often and it's a specific purpose, and it's useful to let people know here's what it is rather than having to always label it and people choosing different labels and stuff like that. If you have any questions, let me know, but otherwise that kind of wraps up the HTML here.